How are you? Nice to meet you.
Very well.
Where are you from?
Israel.
Oh, Israel.
Yeah.
What do you do? I don't think we've ever met.
Yeah, we just talked a bit, chatted on Facebook a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. About coming here, meeting you and doing this talk.
And what kind of astrology do you do? Or what do you do in general?
I'm doing a combination of ancient, traditional, Hellenistic, with the synthesis of, some modern insights and concepts. It's just a grand synthesis of the tradition. But I specialize in Hellenistic astrology.
Do you read Greek?
A little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I learned Greek a little bit.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
What would you like to talk about with me? You probably know more about me than I do about you. So
for sure.
What should we talk about? What would you like to? Or any questions you may have?
That's an interesting question. Everything. Throw something out. We'll dig it out.
Okay. Maybe I should just ask you some of the questions I ask people.
Okay.
One thing I ask is that aside from whatever you teach or whatever you've written, what do you hold most close, and how do you use astrology just for your own purposes, aside from what you may tell other people about?
Oh, beautiful question. Well, I think for me, astrology helps me connect to the rhythm of the cosmos, and it's like it helps me get into sync with my own place in life, and I try to make it more experiential, more.
What does that mean, experiential?
It means really feeling these pulses, the changes of astrological atmosphere inside and outside. It's like putting the connection between this knowledge and living consciously daily with it, navigating with it.
Meditating.
And
that too. Do you meditate?
I do.
What do you know? Sounds like you're hedging your bets. What do you do that's like that? I would like to know how you use your mind when you talk about experiential, experiencing, sensing.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. That's something I'm interested in.
Okay.
And would like to know, try to connect with you where we might have similar experience or not.
Yeah. Well, I'll chart the way there a little bit. Part of my interest in the ancient astrology is that ancient times had more of a connection between the cosmological, philosophical, even the ecstatic kind of experience, which is, you can see it more in the magical tradition or the theurgic tradition, and I think there's a connection there, because I think the Greek left brain kind of mental orientation took astrology to be very scientific, but it's more solar in a sense, and that lunar kind of more emotional, ecstatic, conscious altering part of the tradition just went away, and I'm looking for that connection again, like a more shamanic kind of connection, celebrating different changes.
Well, I'm really interested. You understand what shamans are?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yes.
And let's see where we agree. Shamans are part of every culture. It's not a vocation, it's something that happens. And people who fall through the cracks of society and have experiences in a time sense different than normal either go crazy or they balance out and they become shamans, because they understand and they can see others who are falling through the cracks and they can help guide them to stabilize or not, depending on what they can. Is that your understanding?
That's yes, that's similar. Yeah.
But the idea of a shaman convention is kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah.
They really are alone. They're singular cases usually. Not usually. It's something that isn't a vocation, but it's something that happens to us.
Yes.
That we either recover from and balance, or we can't.
Yes.
And then we become just an oddball.
Yes. Well, I use that word a little bit more universally in the sense of achieving a kind of ecstatic alter states of consciousness, which you can journey between the worlds. And although it's there are many cultures that have like different kinds of shamanism, still something in that essence is everywhere.
So we're talking about chakras. You kind of touched on that.
Yeah, that could fit. That's the Hindu interpretation of same things. In the Andes, the shamans call these eyes.
It's what?
The shamans call in the Andes, in the high Andes of Peru, they call the chakras the eyes.
The eyes?
Energetic eyes. Yeah.
Okay.
Or you have in the Qigong, cosmology, different names, but yeah, I think that's our organs of sensing the influences that I was talking about.
If we're talking about chakras, then chakras have often been paired with the planetary bodies.
Yeah.
And they are opened in a certain order or in different orders. And a chakra isn't just, let's see if we can agree on this, chakra just isn't an intense area within us, but we're within the chakra. Chakras are whole worlds that we wander through.
Okay.
And that at certain times, if we exhaust the need to be in a certain chakra, we've completed it, then we gradually arise in a different chakra. Okay. And there's some kind of progression. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yes, I would agree with that. Do you practice some kind of meditation that has to do with that?
There's a couple things. I do. We could talk about that. But we're also astrologers.
Yeah.
Years ago, in 1976, I published a book that nobody responded to, of course, called Interface. It's a study of the heliocentric planetary nodes. All the orbits of the planets intersect. They have nodes. And where a planet is in our birth chart is either inclined toward another planet or disinclined. And so the list of our inclinations or disinclination is one of the deepest areas of astrology I've ever found. I just eat stuff.
Yes.
I can't say that I've ever got to the bottom of it, but it's. I've spent 40-some years in the Tibetan Vajrayana tradition, training as under Tibetan training and doing very rigorous training. And the winds and the channels, what we call the winds and the channels inside of us, line up at new and full moon, according to Tibetans. And they're especially aligned on eclipses.
Okay.
And there are times when there are, often every year almost, when eclipses are 2 weeks apart. And that interval, that 2 week, I wrote a whole book on it called The Vision of the Eclipse. The whole thing is like, what the concept of the monad?
Yeah.
Well, the monad is like a great spaceship in which many people are asleep and a few are awake. And in that awakening, there is, I'm trying to think of how to put this best. At any given time, certain individuals are aware of what I call the vision of the eclipse. every eclipse brings a vision. And a vision doesn't mean pictures in the sky, it means an intense experience that implants itself in our consciousness, and that takes us like a scroll. It takes a long time for us to exhaust it. So it's like one of those dissolving tablets or something. It takes a long time to assimilate. And I wrote a book. I can see whether I can even give you an idea, but let's see. These are all books that I've written. This is a This is a book on, extremely potent book on the Saturn cycle. My first Dharma teacher was a Rosicrucian initiate. He died when he was 82, and I took care of his things and helped him be buried and made a tombstone from it for him. And he taught me, he had traveled as a Rosicrucian initiator around the world. He was from Scotland. And I saw him in the very end of his life. So I never got out of high school, and I could never learn from anyone that I didn't respect. Just my problem, because I was a naturalist, and I learned from an early age nature's laws, which are very different than man's laws. And so I have great respect for them, and I spent most of my school years paying no attention but working on what I learned. So in one way it was good for me, because I wasn't spoiled in a certain way. So I didn't need to finish high school. I just wanted to go out in the world and live. And do what I was a musician for a long time. I traveled with Bob Dylan, I hitchhiked with him. Iggy Pop was my drummer. I opened for bands like Cream, played with Jerry Garcia.
What instrument?
I was a singer, and I was playing amplified Chicago-style harmonica. Okay. And had a blues band for many years. Okay. That kind of music. But then I became interested in black music. So for many years I studied black musicians, and I also met and interviewed them. I helped to put on the first two, the largest concerts that ever happened, called the Ann Arbor Blues Festivals, after which many of the people began to die. But we had the largest assembly, hundreds of great blues players, like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, and people like that. You may not know, I don't know if you know any of this music.
Yeah.
And they had their bands and their families. And they had never been together. Maybe in a club, two of them were crisscross, and they'd see, but they'd never been. So not only were they showing white America the blues en masse, but they were celebrating being together themselves. So it still remains one of the highlights of my life. I was fully present, and I was in charge of feeding them and giving them drink. So I was very popular. And I got to interview scores of them, audio, video, and later I'm an archivist. I created the largest music database in the world called All Music Guide.
Oh, wow.
And I had 150 full-time people and 500 freelance writers, and we documented all recorded music from 10-inch records on up.
Wow.
And I did the same thing to movies, casting characters, and I have one of the two largest music databases. I don't own it anymore, the other one being IMDb. And I did the same thing for rock and roll posters and Buddhist teachings. And I had the largest astrology library in the world, which I donated to the University of Illinois a few years ago.
Wow.
Thousands of books.
So between all that, how did you find time to write all those books?
First of all, I'm extremely concentrated.
Okay.
Right?
You should teach me to concentrate.
I could. Yeah, you probably could learn too.
Oh.
But I think but what I've really done, I think I really know astrology. And I programmed. I was the first person ever to program astrology.
Yeah, the metrics, right?
Yeah, of course. And share it. Other people had done some programming, but no one shared it.
If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm mistaken, but I think it was part of your initiative to make Robert Schmidt and...
Robert came to live with me for 2.5 years. He came in as basically a physicist, but a mathematician. But I don't think he really knew what he wanted. But in our conversations like this, he became an astrologer. And unfortunately, I love Robert. He's a brilliant guy, and he's a wonderful, very funny human being, but he has a terrible trouble finishing stuff. And so that's very sad to me, but I love him like a brother. And I've done
did you push him to make this project?
I don't think you could push him to do anything. I think that all I did was have conversations with him like we're having, of which he's a very good talker. I mean, very, very smart guy.
Yeah.
He's also very dedicated to what he does. And
that's for sure. Yeah.
And if he has any fault, it's only because he didn't finish things because he found something that he was puzzled about, and he would go on a long sidetrack to figure that out. It might take 6 months.
Okay.
Right, and that's not practical.
Yeah.
But it's understandable. But I don't recommend it. Yeah, but anyways, I forget where I was headed with all. Oh, I was just telling you some of my archiving stuff. Yeah, so I have that, and music, and but I've spent a lot of time. They used to thank me for programming, but they would sort of wink at me and say, "Well, leave the interpreting to us." But they didn't realize that I had terrible trouble with math. I did it because I'm an astrologer, and I have certain visions, and I'm totally can interpret stuff. And I always felt a little bad that they thought of me as a mechanic and didn't realize that I was as much astrologer as they could ever imagine. And so these are all books I've written. We don't have to go through all of them, but this is a brilliant idea, way of looking at retrogrades that no one's ever done, nor, even though I've shared this book and I wrote an article for NCGR like 40 years ago or something, no one gets it. But it's just basically understanding that the heliocentric position of a planet is a steady state motion.
Yeah.
And that...
There's no retrogrades in relation to the sun.
No, of course, but so that the inner planets are slightly different than the outer planets, but at any given time, the geocentric position is ahead of the helio, ahead of the zodiac, which hasn't been traveled over recently, or it's behind it.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is that you can think of somebody having a Mars in the future of what will be covered soon, and either going direct or retrograding back, or it's more dwelling in the past. We've been over that, and we go over it 3 times.
Yeah.
That's simply the idea, but I flesh it out so that people can understand it. But I think it's a wonderful way to understand that somebody may, like, my Mercury is as far back, Mercury can get about, it varies, but maybe 26, 28 degrees behind the sun or ahead of the sun. Mine is all the way back. So I call that burn rate. Bringing those two positions together is a lot of trouble. It's going to be difficult. So some people have no variation. So to me, their mind is very clear. But Mercury for me is way back, so I've had to work really hard to get my mind focused. But then my mind is very focused. So it's that idea. But there's...
I can relate to that. My Mercury is also pretty far.
Correct? Oh, it is?
Yeah.
It's behind?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a certain benefit of that in order... And mine is direct. That means it's the third pass, and it's coming from behind, but now it's forward looking. It's not looking back. It's looking forward, but from way back. Same idea. And in 1976, I published a book called Astrophysical Directions. It was the first time anyone had tried to take all of the deep space points like pulsars, quasars, and stuff like that, transfer them to ecliptic notation, and all I had was a typewriter at that time. I had nothing, and no money of any kind. And so I've released that book again. Where is that one? That's here. It's called The Astrology of Space. And these are all free books. Here's an 800-page book on Tibetan astrology. Wow. And I've also studied Chinese astrology. So I'm trying to tell you, I've done a lot of different things.
Yes.
And I'm very prolific.
Yes, I can
And
see
I'm
that.
also a good writer. So anything, what I'm saying is, I want to hear what you're doing. I'm trying to give you an idea more of what I am. But any of that I am that you know about, we could talk.
Yeah.
And that might be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Well, if we could go back to the first point, that's interesting because I think that you are doing that yourself because you practice different Tibetan and Hindu and probably many different
but mostly
meditation techniques.
Tibetan.
Mostly Tibetan.
They have had a center teaching meditation since the 1980s. And I've worked with all of the great, in the Kaju, Karmapa is our teacher. And I've been to Tibet to see him when he was 12 years old, bringing him calculations that they were losing.
Okay.
And trying to show him how we could do it, but it still wasn't quite done. And then later I'm a really good photographer, so I did photo books of his holiness.
Okay.
But I spent time with him, and time enough that he'd tease me and grab my beard and stuff like that, which he doesn't do. Because I've been around a long time, and I've studied Mahamudra for 30 years. My teacher's 95 years old. He's Tibetan, speaks no English, and I've been with him for 30-some years. And we have a yearly 10-day intensive that I drive to 800 miles. What I'm trying to say is I've done all of the preliminary training that is traditional in Tibet, so I'm not just intellectual.
Okay. Yes, that's what I'm referring to because this is the synthesis that I'm thinking about. You know, not many astrologers. You know, have also practiced some kind of meditation or spiritual.
Exactly.
But a lot of the astrology goes much to the mind.
There's what?
It's really focused on.
It's conceptual.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Because there's concepts and experience.
Yeah. Exactly.
But beyond experience is realization. Those are all very different things.
Yeah.
And
So you can talk about the signification of a planet, etc. But if you didn't sample it experientially at different points in your life and felt it emotionally, physically, been tapped into that frequency, you don't really have that direct experience. You can't really talk about it.
you don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about, right?
Yeah.
Well, I told you. Well, Shakespeare was the best we ever produced in terms of being practical with language.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read any.
A little bit.
Read his sonnets. They're easy and they're profound, and it's the closest thing to Dharma that English language has produced that I know of.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying, that for many, many years I would go to see my teacher, the Tibetan Lama, and I would tell him about my experiences and my dreams and stuff like that. And some of them were pretty wonderful, right? And every time what he would say to me is, those are just experiences. Don't bother with them, just keep moving, right? Because they just differentiate between, and even one of the great Upadeshas, the Pith teaching says, in the midst of experience, realization may arise, or can arise. And in the tradition I'm in, which is Vajrayana, in Zen it's called Kensho, which is the recognition of the nature of the mind. And in our tradition it's called the pointing out, it's called recognition, and you cannot do it alone. You have to have someone who has experienced it, who can point it out. It's like a figure ground painting where you can't see the hidden painting. Someone says, there it is, and then always then you can see it.
Yeah.
But once you reach recognition, then you have your first realization. And that realizations are like, realize how to turn a light switch on. They're forever. They don't go away.
Yeah,
And there's a
they're
huge,
yours. Yeah.
So this is, to me, what you're kind of pointing at here.
Yes.
So we can talk about it. All of that is all I live for. And all that interests me, I mean, I know this, astrology, and I love it and stuff, and I can talk about it with the best of anyone. But it's not the language I spend a lot of time with anymore, because The Dharma is much more difficult for me, very difficult, but so elegant and so profound and so much useful.
And you said you had a hard time concentrating. Did the meditation help you concentrate?
This is a story. I practiced what's called tranquility meditation, shamatha, for 32 years.
Wow.
And never got anything out of it. Then, I'm just telling you the story. Then, at the time I was working for NBC, which is a broadcast company, and I was a senior consultant in astrology because they had the largest astrology site in the world. They needed someone with authenticity. But they laid off 10,000 people, and I was one of them. So suddenly, at pretty old, I had no job. And I still had a family and money to make. So I was really upset. And my family didn't know what to do with me. I have four kids and 8 grandkids now. And I didn't even go. We have a wonderful Dharma center, big shrine, stupa, and all kinds of stuff. I wasn't sitting. I wasn't doing anything. I was leaving the house and going out into nature. I watched the sun come up for 6 months straight, unless it was raining. Wow. And I was crawling around with a camera and lens. And in that process of looking through these lenses, I managed to concentrate. All those years, I was trying to learn to concentrate, tranquility meditation. The problem was, and then my teacher said at one point, he says, those of you who program, and I'm a programmer, among others, you already have a leg up because you already have intense concentration. Then I realized, shit, I couldn't do anything with it because I already was super able to concentrate. And here I was trying to, it's like salting the salt. I was trying to do something that already was mastered totally, because you can't do programming or video editing or something like that without very, very careful focus. And then when I was out in the grass like that, watching the sun come up, soaking wet because the grass is wet in the summertime, something happened with inside me. So I was no longer so interested in what I was seeing through the lenses. I became aware of the seeing itself. And then one of my Lama friends came, someone that we helped escape from Nepal and brought him to this country. But then he went into a 3-year retreat, 2 of them. Wow. And he came to visit. He says, Michael, he says, you're doing just what the ancient book said, that you went away from everyone. And he says, there's something you don't know about. He says, you know about the Lama, your Lama that you work with, and you know about the Lama of scriptures, all the Dharma. But you don't know about what is called the Lama of appearances. Mother Nature is a perfect teacher, and that is something, since I was little, I was a great naturalist. I was an expert in salamanders and frogs. And even the university gave me like a little place to be, just because I was, even as a kid, teenager, because I just was so good at it and loved it so much. So once he told me that, then I realized that what I had discovered is what's called Vipassana. That there's many kinds of Vipassana. This is a special Vipassana that's only done in Mahamudra. And I found out that my mind was so clear that the only way it would be clear is if I went out and photographed. So if I wanted to have a clear mind, I had to go out and photograph. And I did this for a long time. It took me like 2 years to extract the clarity from the photography and
apply it somewhere else, to sitting on the computer writing.
Writing was the next one, but now I can do it almost anywhere. But I did become, I can just give you a quick picture here. Now, these just have to go down. These are just recent. This is the kind of stuff that I do.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I became really, really good at photography, being ruined by photographers. And I've never printed one out, but I've done hundreds of thousands of them. So anyway, I'm telling you the story.
That's interesting, because there's also kind of association between the focusing of the lens and the focusing of the mind.
And also the fact that I was looking at, I'm what's called a close-up photographer, not a macro photographer. Okay. I didn't want to get too close. I want context.
Okay.
And so what I was seeing was like tiny dioramas, tiny little worlds. And my world was so painful right then that I completely forgot to worry or to think of anything else, which is what... But the sad part that now I'm troubled with is that it took a pretty bad turn in my life to get me serious enough for that to happen. And I'm afraid that people who are trying to reach this point of recognition, and I had pointing out instructions many times from great lamas, some of the highest lamas even took me in a room and tried to point out to me, and I didn't get it. It was very embarrassing. But suddenly I got it. And then my teachers, they all know, they tested me and that was all good. So I've been just gradually, realization or even enlightenment. This isn't enlightenment. This is what's called realization. And it's just the beginning of a path. But it's not a state, it's a process.
Yeah.
Like breathing.
Yeah.
You don't stop breathing, you don't stop realizing. It's not a state. You're never going to get to heaven. The way our teachings go is that this is samsara, you know that word,
Yeah.
and you know the word
Suffering.
nirvana.
Yeah.
Well, samsara and nirvana are connate. That means that they're two sides of the same coin, and they arise not independently, but they rise together. And that realization in our tradition is the realization of... So nirvana is the realization of samsara. You're not going to go anywhere else, but you're going to realize what is here.
Yeah.
That's the idea. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Beautiful.
I'm talking too much, but
It's beautiful. That's precious for me because concentrating is so hard for me to sit down and write. I have Mercury in Pisces, and I also have that further from the sun thing.
we should look at your chart. Let's look at your chart. Are you willing to do that?
Yeah, you can put
I
it
want to
in.
take a look at your helio chart. That's
Okay.
the Dharma archetype.
Okay.
And I want to see what you're up against. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I know your name. Ofek.
Yes.
And what's the birth date and year? Does that look right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can do it. Let's start to look at your chart. First of all, you may be used to looking at it this way.
Yeah.
Does that look right?
Yes, that's what.
Okay, this is the way I look at it.
Okay. This is the heliocentric.
No, this is not.
Ah.
This is your chart in
Zero. Okay.
the moment of your birth. But what was actual positions of the planets were these, which is very different. Totally different. You have a much more dynamic chart. And this is what I call the Dharma Chart. It's kind of hard to explain. The geo chart is a chart of the circumstances of your personality, of your situation, what we call karma.
Yeah.
But the question is, what is it that drives karma? And the way the Buddhists teach it is that in Sanskrit, you say you know Sanskrit?
Sanskrit, but to read Sanskrit? No.
Oh, no, okay.
No. Greek a little bit.
Oh, a little bit. Anyway, there's what's called the alaya consciousness. It's also called the storehouse consciousness. It's also called technically the alaya vijnana. And what it is the Buddhists believe that our personality, Michael Erlewine,
Just one phase.
is
of,
abandoned at death, totally.
Yeah.
But what are called the vasanas, the urges inside of us, what led to our karma, are not. They move forward, and the Buddhists discriminate between rebirth and reincarnations. Hindus believe in reincarnation of the soul.
Yeah.
Buddhists do not. They believe that there is no permanent soul. They believe that these vasanas, these impulses that persevere in new parents, new DNA, and new situation, those urges draw around itself an entirely new person, no relation, and doesn't look like, but similarities in the desires, and stuff like that. And so the helio chart is more of a chart of what it is that continues on and that perseveres. But what I call it is the archetype. or the tribe that you belong to, the type of. And so I've been studying this for 45 years, at least. And it doesn't matter what the signs are. It doesn't matter which planets are where, although you can interpret it like we do.
Okay.
What matters is that there's a pattern there. And the orbs can be loose because it's either something there or there's nothing there.
Okay.
And it looks more like, and this is actually pretty much there. Yeah, 18, 19, and 11. It's a little off, but I don't know what he's talking about. So, that's weird. So, anyway, you have a very strong T-square, which you let's go back here. But you don't have it all here. So that this means that your internalness is much stronger than what you appear. It's very practical. So when you talk about wanting to do something, you have here's a wedge.
Oh, that explains it very, very well. The Mars-Saturn opposition, the T-square in Neptune.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have Mercury, Uranus in the other one? Is it there?
No.
Because it should be. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Right. So this is really what you are. I mean, when I discovered this, and maybe people, this is empowering. You realize that 400 and some years ago, Copernicus pointed out that everything doesn't revolve around the Earth. That's selfish. And that astronomers said, yeah, and they went away with 2 charts, and they make good money. They're respected. Astrologers went away with the same chart that was not so clear.
Yeah.
This is totally clear. And this happened to me when I first programmed this chart. I was amazed about it, and then I began to realize that this was more me than my other chart, and I began to transmigrate.
Okay.
My identification moved from just my person, which is nothing special, to what I am. And after a while, all I was this. And this is what's called an empowerment. And I'm trying to encourage it. I mean, I can show you my chart, which is
This is the heliocentric
yeah.
one?
So I have 6 planets, 25, 25, 26.
It's a grand trine.
Very accurate. And
wow.
No crosses. So what this is good for is seeing the big picture, analytical stuff. So I'm really good at that, but I don't have any red lines. I don't have any T-crosses, so I'm not the warmest being in the world. I'm not the most lovable one, but I'm pretty sharp. And you'd have to do, let's see.
But where is your extremely prolific, is that like the Jupiter Gemini or Jupiter Mercury? Jupiter Mercury square.
What do you mean? Which prolific? We can also look for that in the geo. This is my geo. I have Moon, Saturn, Uranus. But in local space, that means in the horizon system of azimuth and altitude, all of these things are lined up within half a degree.
Wow.
So it's very good to look at your birth moment and planets from different perspectives. They're like algebras.
Yes.
Each one brings out something and suppresses
another dimension.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but if I want to look at my wheel, I have Neptune node, northern node, exactly 25 degrees.
Venus in the 9th and Jupiter. Okay, yeah.
But I don't use houses anymore. I just use patterns, and
Okay.
But I don't use signs. I don't care about signs because I learned a long time ago where all the matter is. I know where all the galaxies are. Where
So,
I know
so
what's
the
out
relationship between planets is the primary.
It's not the relationship. Well, yeah, the relationship in a whole chart sense. Not just this, but what would have to go all the way around. This is not very spectacular, but this is pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason to see why I wouldn't transmigrate.
Okay.
But the process was so epical, so life-changing for me, that what we call it in Tibetan Buddhism is empowerment. I was empowered by this transformation. And I tried to point it out, maybe you can get it for yourself, because it's why astrologers are suffering.
Okay.
They're just not able to make a living. They wouldn't agree, but that's my view.
Okay.
And also they're insecure, and they're not appreciated by society, and they blame society for not.
Yeah, accepting them.
And they have not provided to society what it takes to cherish them.
Yeah.
And this is the truth. And
Yeah.
but this would be something that you could become empowered by, because it's a very strong chart, and it's quite different. So you're not what you appear to be, and although you appear pretty good, I mean you're really sharp.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Well, I'm old. Right?
You have such a vital soul that you're ageless.
Well, I'm getting there. What I have is some real experience with training the mind. I mean, sloppily, I'm pretty sloppy, but I've been with real masters.
Yeah.
And they're not sloppy. I mean, I'm doing my best, but the best I can do isn't as good as they can do. I mean, they're incredible.
Yeah, well, the few things you mentioned that you did in your life is it feels like a couple of incarnations condensed into one from my perspective. I didn't. I want to write the book for 4 years, and I can't sit and write one chapter. It's.
Well, years ago, I used to read different literature. I don't read much anymore, except for text. And I would read Kafka. You know Kafka?
Yeah, of course. Oh.
Kafka also wrote diaries.
Yes.
And I read all his diaries.
Beautiful diaries.
And there was one line in his diaries that I couldn't quite get, but the classmate says, somewhere he used to sit in on meetings, town meetings and stuff, and just be quiet.
Yeah.
And he said, each line that I write, it already has perfection. And I never could figure that out, but then after some years I figured out what he meant is that instead of trying to be a writer, he perfected his mind, and that therefore everything he did
was perfect.
Had that seal.
Yeah.
And I understood that.
Okay.
And I'm working on that if I want to become a great astrologer or a good astrologer, I can do it faster by developing my mind than I can by trying to be an astrologer.
Yes.
By doing it. So that's what I've been doing. And
I have a very, very big place for Kafka in my heart because my father did his doctorate on Kafka.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And my father, he died of cancer pretty tragically, but after he published that doctorate as a book, so he has a book on Kafka, and Kafka was a cancer, right?
That's me.
At least in the regular, it was a cancer, right? Cancer
I don't remember.
Ah, okay.
Honest with you.
Yeah. My father identified with his suffering a lot. His suffering with, he didn't understand his Jewish identity. So my father was also, so just a digression. Where you said Kafka,
he was a big influence on me because of that one line. And also, I loved his stuff, the books, the short stories, and I read all European literature. All of Thomas Mann, but that was a long time ago, and I don't read anymore because I'd rather just be doing this.
Yeah.
Right? And it's as good as it gets for me.
And do you still teach?
I don't. I teach. What I do is I write every day on Facebook an essay.
Yeah.
And I have, 7,000...
Wow.
7,000, rather, 5,000 you're allowed, but then there's followers. I have a lot of people who, it's the only Dharma they get. They don't, but I don't know how much good it does, but when I have a birthday, I get 1,000 happy birthdays. But
of course it does, it just, it ripples.
It does, and I've done a lot of stuff in the Dharma. My wife and I raised the money to build the 3-year retreat, and we've turned out many, many lamas. And I served on the boards, and I made a bookstore in Michigan for them when they couldn't afford it. And for years I made beautiful sadhanas, most elegant. And I still, just last week Lama visit, I recorded all these mantras that we're going to release as little videos. So you can hear a mantra for Chenrezig, love and compassion, or you can have medicine Buddha, and just listen to it.
it's interesting for me if maybe a part of the Lama's practice, because they are aware of, astrological cycles and stuff, are there practices for working with them energetically, or
what's that mean? I need to. You're using the word energetically.
Yeah.
I think I'm not up to speed on that. I think
Okay.
you have to empower me in that term.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
it's a bit abstract, but like Qigong is energetic work.
It's certainly energetic.
Yeah. Feeling the life energy, that astral
Qi.
body sense.
Like
yeah,
Qi?
the Qi. Yeah. Just so working with the different qualities or different energies of the planets or something
I think I
of the
do
sort.
that through what's called insight meditation.
Okay.
I mean, I'm doing it now, right? As much as I can.
Okay.
So whether that's Qi, whether that's energetic, I don't know, but it's clear. It
Okay.
has a clarity and a luminosity to it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And, but you're saying something else I'm trying to understand.
Yes, I'm really dull with words here because there's so much misuse of those words, and But when we talked before about that shamanic kind of bridging between the worlds, so I'm trying to find out cultures that are doing that directly without the interface of the mind, of concepts, of just opening up and channeling some planetary energy or something of that sort. Or
I mean, the only trouble I have with what you say is that, to me, first of all, I had to take Algebra 1 3 times. I'm a very hard case. I learn very slowly.
okay,
So I don't quite. It's either that or it's a little abstract for me.
okay,
That I know. I work very hard to be present.
okay,
In the tradition that I'm in, we have what are called Mahasiddhas. And one of the great Mahasiddhas, and one of the earliest ones, was Tilopa.
okay,
And Tilopa had what are called, he left his 6 words of advice,
okay,
in which 2 of them are recursive, so I won't mention them. But the other ones are the essence of what I try to do, and the essence of the teachings just in a few words.
Okay.
And the first one is, don't prolong the past.
okay,
The second one is, don't invite the future.
okay,
The third one is, don't alter the present.
okay,
And the fourth one is, relax just as it is.
okay,
And so those are the rules or the slogans that these great Mahamudra practitioners follow. That means don't spend a lot of time expecting anything or getting upset or excited.
yeah,
And don't dwell on what's already over the dam, what's already done.
yeah,
Don't dwell on it. And this is why Tibetans, at least I don't believe too much in many therapies where they're going back and digging through the past over and over. It's easier to make a new past than it is to. It's very hard, even in Buddhism. The way they teach it is that trying to remove karmic stains is very difficult. Once they're done, you're going to reap the reward of it. It's better not to do them again. Learn not. And then the hardest one for people is don't alter the present. Don't monkey with anything. Don't try to change what's happening.
Okay.
You may not like it, but the present moment is everything's come from the present moment. Every thought, word, deed, invention, everything came out of the mind. The mind is not very good in the past because we start to monkey with that, right? We remember it differently, and it's certainly not very good in the future. It's foggy. We can't. It's like, you can't count on it happening. The one thing we have is like an oxygen vent. Is the present moment. Everything important is right there, but you have to not mess with it. Oh, I don't like this, or didn't feel very good. That stuff, that's altering the present.
yeah.
Right. It's that idea.
Although it's a kind of a paradoxical thought, because if part of your present is doing something that you know intentionally do, then you might say it's altering, but it's also accepting what you do in that moment.
Yeah, but that's not altering. I understood what you said, but what they're saying is don't get caught in a dualism. Right? Don't get caught in a doubt.
Okay.
I mean, if you get caught in a doubt, then that's the present. Own it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's
the
yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The only thing I meant by doing work, intentional work, is it just moving from automatic to manual. You know, it just intentionally going out and seeing the sunrise is an intentional invocation of that moment.
Yeah, but that was like a kriya
thought.
at the time. I mean, it was like that was a natural thing to do.
Okay.
It was just exactly what I should have been doing.
Yeah.
And even I didn't understand it, but I was still doing it.
Okay.
I mean, you can twist it any way you want, but you know, at that moment, I didn't care what anyone thought, and I didn't care that my family was wondering why Michael wasn't sitting on the cushion, because I knew exactly what I was doing, and for the first time I was in charge of. I knew what I had to do and how to do it, and I never knew that what I had to do and how to do it, so that no one. I never had to, and they even say that at recognition, the guru's job is finished, and I still have my. But you've mixed your mind with the guru.
Yeah.
And it's up to you. This is why Buddhism is do it yourself. It's not, even the Buddha couldn't touch our forehead. He could only point out how we might go about it. So,
of course,
from that moment onward, I became in charge of my life and responsible. But the ability to respond, I was able to respond without praying for something or hoping for something.
Yes.
It was up to me. If I didn't want to do it, then there would I sit.
You took your power back.
That's right.
Yeah,
well, you could say that. I wouldn't think I took it back. I had it.
You realized it.
I realized it. Yeah. So, to us, in my tradition, realization is everything. Maybe that's what you mean by what you want to do with energetics. You want to. I got the idea. You want to descend into the practical world of experience. You want to make it real.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
I want to marry both sides of the coin, not only the left brain, academical, conceptual, mathematical side of astrology. I want to push it more into the direct experience and being conscious of that, not altering it maybe, but feeling the movements, being part of that, being
this is what's
absorbed.
called non-dual. This is what's called realization.
Okay.
I mean, it's impossible to do what you're saying and also watch what you're doing.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
But there's a certain joy to immersion.
Yeah.
And that's why in Vipassana we say it's like nothing is seen but the seeing itself. Resting in the seeing, not what is seen. And even Hegel in German literature I studied Hegel when I was younger, and his main work was called The Phenomenology of Mind.
Going back to the things themselves.
Well, he had a line in there that says we go behind the curtain of the self to see what's there, but mainly for there to be something to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's basically Mahamudra.
Yeah.
So
this correlates beautifully with the topic of my lecture that I did today.
Tell me about what you've done. I mean,
my lecture was on the role of light in astrology.
The role of light. What a beautiful title. But tell me what you were saying.
Yeah. Well, it's a mix of many things, but the major argument was that light served as the medium by which we experience, visually at least, the planets and everything. But it is also the way that all components of astrology were articulated originally. This is my argument, because
I'm trying to get it.
Yeah. So what I try to prove is that, let's say, signs, as they are relationship of the Earth to the Sun, so they are also reflective in different light relationships that the Sun has to the Earth, different temperature, different quality, different hue, different color. But if you take light as being more than visible light, you take the whole electromagnetic spectrum. Right. So light has within it, or the Sun has within it, the seeds of all experience. That's the unity, that's the seer. But the objects that revolve around it, the planets, are what they're like deriving different essences from the Sun according to their place, their composition, and
so
they're
like
really
like a dance.
Yeah, it's like really everything is in the Sun, but there are different things that articulate in time and space.
The qualities of the Sun.
Yes.
Or extensions.
Yes.
Right.
So the signs are differentiations of different qualities in the annual cycle. The houses are different qualities in the diurnal cycle. Planets are like pulling on different energies. They become ambassadors of different energies that exist in the Sun, and of course that goes back to the ontology of light and ideas of light being the light of the mind, and as we see object in the world, and we need the Sun to see the object, then we need the mind to see object in the mind. So I'm trying to say that in the chart, the luminaries are like the eyes of consciousness, and when something is in a certain phase and it catches the light of the Sun in a certain way, and it's visible in a certain way, then it's visible in the mind in a certain way. And it also gains visibility outwardly in the world at certain instances. But then, you have like a language that that puts the medium of light back into astrology, and you can differentiate between the principles of what is visible and invisible. So I took that concept, and then I worked out all the different constituents of the astrological language and articulate them in the concept of light.
What about shadow?
Yes, that's the nemesis. That's the other side.
But
yeah,
they have to be conate.
They
They
are.
have to rise together.
They are. I call it light.
But it's only light because of shadow.
Yes.
Right.
So the other side is the shadow, is the dark. So that what makes it articulative, or as you said, it's like without that polarization, there is no movement. There is no consciousness as we know it.
Right.
On Earth.
So they're conate, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't want to think of shadow as bad or negative, because without it we wouldn't see anything.
Of course.
So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't fully understand, but I get most of it.
Yeah. It's
cool.
like, if you take the daily cycle and you say that the MC is the most visible point because it's where the Sun is.
Yeah, I know.
So, I know you know. So if you take the lowest point, which is the darkest place, it's not.
You mean the nadir?
Yes, it's not bad because it's dark, but it does signify things that are secret or internal.
Well, it's also the point of incarnation. I mean, to me, the chart is a descent into matter.
Yeah.
And the fourth house is the beginning to rise from the matter.
Yeah.
Up into, that's what Capricorn. I put the. To me, the fourth house is the nadir in Cancer.
Yeah.
That's the way you should orient these cycles.
Okay.
And then Capricorn is the ruler of the light, right? The controller of the light, the caretaker of the light. Because you like to use the word articulation. It's one of my favorite words too. Discrimination is another word, but articulation is a better word. I don't fully get it, but I fully feel we're like on the same wavelength,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What's your other lecture?
My other lecture is on Monday. It's about the Hellenistic doctrine of the moon.
And what is that briefly? Give me
Well,
the
there's a
concept.
very elaborate doctrine delineating many nuances of the moon, which just didn't.
And I know a lot about the. I mean, I've
Yes.
really studied the moon.
Yes.
So let's talk about the moon.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think.
So I will be talking mainly about part of the doctrine, which is the application separation doctrine.
Tell me what that is.
Yeah, it's a composite of the phase of the moon with the planet that the moon is separating from and the planets that the moon is going to apply to in a chart. So if
Okay.
you're born in a certain
And
phase,
do you use full phase aspects? That's what I have a whole book on that.
yeah.
And you understand what that is?
A four-phased?
Full phase. That means
Full phase.
applying and separating are totally different interpretations of a square. Applying square is totally different than a
Of
separating
course,
square.
of course. No, what I'm saying is, I'm taking all the doctrine of the ancients of the moon, and there's a synthesis going. You take the model of the phases. There are a couple in the Hellenistic material.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that material, but
Yeah, that's too technical. But the essence is that, let's say the moon in your chart was separating from Venus. It was conjuncting Venus before you were born,
Right.
and then it's going to move and conjunct Mars. But there's a difference if it is moving while it's filling with light, while it's waxing.
oh well, that's full,
Yeah.
Isn't that full? It's not what we're talking about. Full phase. I mean, we're not.
Yeah, we're talking, but I'm combining the phases with the application separation of other planets, not application separation for the aspect to the sun. Not only when the moon is in the quarter phase or Gibbon's phase, anywhere in the waxing or waning.
You're talking about the synodic cycle. I'm trying to get.
Yes,
Is that what we're talking about?
we're talking
So
about a combination of the synodic cycle of the moon
Okay.
with the contacts the moon is doing in the chart. The contacts with planets.
Okay. I'm trying. I'm working
Yeah,
on it.
yeah, it's okay.
Keep going. Don't give up.
Yeah, I'm not giving up. So let's say, like in your chart, you have a crescent moon.
Well, let's take a look at it. I mean, let's actually look at it.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I'll tell you also something about that I think is fascinating. Okay. So you want to look at it in the wheel? Is that
Yeah,
make
the
you
regular
happier?
one, yeah.
But you can't really see the angles and stuff. But
That's okay.
okay, so tell me. So here's my moon.
Yeah, and your moon is applying to Saturn.
It is.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah, like mine.
Uh-huh.
No, mine is separating from Saturn.
So I'm still. It's coming.
Yeah.
it gets
And it's let's say it's separating from a square to Venus. Am I right? Yeah. And it's also, you might also say, it's applying for, what is this in Taurus, for a trine with Venus. So you take all this into consideration, and you take 30 degrees before, and you see what the moon touched. So the moon now, in a sense, interprets the light of Venus and takes it with him as it shapes the energy, solar energy that it reflects from the sun, and it connects to Saturn. So there's a connection between Venus and Saturn going through the moon in your chart.
Yeah, I have to think about this. I want to show you something else,
Yeah.
and that might be what you're talking about, but I want your opinion of it anyway. I wrote a book called Full Phase Aspects, and I came up with a new way of looking at what I think partly what you're talking about, that I want to see if you can understand.
Okay.
You seem to understand lots. So this is just, I don't know when I'll get to it.
You also did all the graphics.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I did my graphics here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at that, but not great. Just what I do is, let me see where I actually show you one. It's a way of somewhere I have to
Oh
get
wow,
there.
so much.
Oh yeah, I'm very thorough. Let's see. Hey,
Hey, Michael, when you gonna talk to me?
are you ready pretty soon?
I'll be ready in about like 5 minutes, and I want you to have a chat with him too. This is my friend Bill,
Sure.
and he works in my booth, and he's very good into Bitcoin and all stuff, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin and all that.
I know
He's
about
done
that.
Everywhere, he's done workshop and
Well,
you know.
we're interviewing here. It might not be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes or something.
Okay, 10 minutes.
But I'll come and get you.
I'll see you, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna set an appointment with him.
Yeah,
somewhere.
sure. Okay, see you
Okay.
soon. Soon, guys.
We'll see you later.
And we can also talk again.
Okay.
Hopefully, it would be nice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to where I actually show this just all the different aspects. Maybe I can just describe what I do. I had some wonderful charts. I just can't get to them. Well, I know what I can do. I can maybe find it this way faster. No, I can't see that too well. No, be patient with me. I'm sorry.
I have patience. Okay.
Okay.
I see many phases.
No, but what I'm trying to get at is that I created a chart, and I don't think it was this one. Instead, I took all the angular separations, and some of them are waxing and some are waning. It's very hard to look at a chart and see it without having to think.
Okay.
And I built a chart where I put all of the. See, here's the thing. Here is like this would be like Aries, start and body, Taurus, but all it is a cycle.
Okay.
So this is
Which starts from Jupiter.
So this is applying and this is separating. So all of these are, everything over here are all the applying ones, and everything in this one all the separate. So instantly you can see, and these are different major aspects. So instantly you can look at it and see whether someone's got a lot of applying, a lot of separating, and exactly how many degrees without having to think about it in your mind.
Okay.
Follow me?
Okay. Yes.
And let me see if I can show you some better examples of it. Now, just there's waxing, and I call this giving or taking. I'm trying to make it easy for someone to understand.
Beautiful.
And I made a whole program with this, that taking, receiving.
So you're doing that from every planet.
I take all the
Yeah.
planets. You can do it helio, you don't have it in a program.
Yeah.
I also discriminate between inner and outer,
Yeah.
and between, and I talk about, introvert chart and inner private,
Wow. So much work.
extrovert. Oh, well, that's all I do, as my family could tell you. Or outer extrovert. So if a lot of planets are in public and they're flying, it's different than a lot of planets public separated. And I interpret all that. I'm looking for, and then I look at the four quarters carefully.
Yeah.
And then I interpret it.
From every planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a
Okay.
program that does it. I don't think I released it, but
Okay.
the first quarter suggests an inward to outward approach, meaning coming up with and working with ideas in the most formative state, shifting them into plans, then moving to make those plans real, which is as they go down through the
Yes.
chart.
Yes.
But so, I think somewhere I have real chart examples. My books are long. I'm a long-winded person, as you know already. And also, I really, really, really studied aspects, and I really know the difference between waxing and waning aspects. And let's see. Anyway, I think you're getting an idea anyway.
Yes.
I find this way of looking at, and I have an interactive program where you can just pick a planet and instantly see how you put it at the top and everything how it relates to it. All the rest of the planets instantly.
Yeah.
And this is something like what you're talking
Yes.
about. And so that's why I interrupted you. I'm sorry, but
You didn't. No,
I
it's
think
okay.
we're sharing something here. Maybe I'm running out of. Let's see. Maybe I'm getting to something here. Yeah, I also discriminate between the outgoing, this point and that point, this point and that point. So,
Wow.
outer point, inner point. I thought I had some. Maybe they're at the very end. Those are my charts. this is just patterns. Sometime we should talk about patterns. I really have spent 40 years on patterns.
Okay.
And they're more important than anything else.
Yeah.
Especially in the helio. And we just looked at yours a bit. Anyway, I can't find what I want. And I already went through everything. Yes, that's good. So.
Yeah, so this is very close to what I'm talking about. But I think it's really unique, the combination of that. I didn't see it anywhere.
Sometimes you might have to sit down with me and draw it on a paper or something.
Yes, yeah.
I want to understand. I don't fully understand it.
Okay.
I get the gist of it, which is why I talked about that, because it's something that. But I think what you're saying is a little more complex yet.
Yeah, it's a bit more complex. And if you add to that the proximity and the latitude and the speed and every other thing you have on the moon, and the rulers and all of that.
But there's a limit to what the mind can deal with.
Of course.
So what I've tried to do is boil everything down to what's called like a bija, or just a point.
Yeah.
And I find that people can get that.
Yeah, yes, of course. I'm just, because I'm not talking from my own invention, because I'm talking from the ancient doctrine, so I'm trying to be right with that, I myself, it's really hard for me to do all the synthesis of all this, but I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just talking about the application separation and the phase of the moon and how you combine the both. But the ancients say you need to look at every nuance of the moon. You have to calculate, its speed, declination, latitude, whatever. So if you really want to examine it, you should take your, your magnifying lens and look and see if it's in its conjunctions in on latitude or not, and if it was, going up. To the ecliptic and crossing it and going to his north node. So this is really complex.
It sounds. My view is that, first of all, I've never been. I'm trying to learn Russian at one point, and French and Latin. What I found out is that these guys, friends of mine, are Chris Brennan and people like this, are going into the past.
Yeah.
Don't always even know the language, like Greek, but still going there somehow. I don't know how you would do that, but I'm sure they're doing whatever they're doing, trying to find something. And the only thing they could possibly be looking for is some kind of direction, or some kind of goal.
Yeah.
But something that I learned a long time ago, and it's the basis of everything I've done, is that the mind itself is what the Tibetans call a wish-fulfilling gem. Everything that ever was came from it.
Yeah.
And everything is also still there. It means that...
Yes, we interacted directly. It's ingrained in us, in a way.
Like the Kafka comment.
Yeah.
It also goes for this, that instead of mining in the fields of ancient languages that we can barely understand, if you would spend the same time going into your own mind, with my teacher, we went to, I don't think I told you this, we went to China in 2004. He's 95 now. And we went to what's called Wu Tai Shan. Wu Tai Shan is a series of 5 mountains in the shape of a die, four of them and one in the middle.
Okay.
And what he explained to us is that this is where astrology first entered our world system. And the Bodhisattva Manjushri, who's the one that goes with astrology, appeared there as a youth, and out of the top of his head came the 84,000 astrological dharmas.
Wow.
And they were placed in the world. And humanity loved it, but they started to neglect the Dharma, which is the fiducial. Because my teacher teaches that astrology is one of the limbs of the yoga, but not the root. Astrology is part of samsara. And the best we can do with astrology is improve our condition.
Yeah.
It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We can never, it's not going to get us out of, it's just going to make us more comfortable for the ride down. So, but the Dharma is the root. Dharma, we can actually realize samsara. So anyway, so
I understand what you said, but the only problem I have with that is, with my limited human abilities, I couldn't invent astrology from the beginning. We did take it from the ancients, and the distinctions and the aspects and the houses and all those stuff. So, what my mind, the reason why I'm searching in the past, is not only going back into the roots of astrology, but in some sense trying to go back to the roots of that primal experience of the sky, which we talked about before.
I like that idea, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm not speaking to you.
Yeah.
Directly. I'm saying you don't need the old language. You just need to go into the
understand.
mind and allow your and
Yeah.
to trust your mind. All of my techniques, some of which they use, like local space, is everywhere now, didn't come from
Yes.
anyone. It came
Yes.
from me
Yes.
learning to go into my mind and bring it out.
Yes, but you needed tools to help you articulate the visions that you have. It's like
Yeah.
you can hear music, but if you don't know the notes, then it's hard for you to compose it.
No, but I would say that we don't know the notes, like you say, but in the process of realizing and extrapolating and bringing
Yes.
it out, that's how we become expert.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, and I experienced
But
that.
that's a big point,
Yeah,
for
that's
you.
a big point. Yeah,
right? That
yeah. I'm leaning
you
on.
don't need to
on-
know it before, is what I'm saying.
Yes, I understand.
You only can learn it by doing it.
Yes,
So that's my point.
yes. And part of the challenge is to take that which is so fragmented and to try to really understand it, how it works directly, to understand it with the mind and with experience and with other people, and make it available now to people.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that, yes, you can do that, but it's harder because chances are that you or I or any of these guys don't know the ancient language, all that. There's going to be
Yeah.
a lot of mistakes that you
Of
wouldn't be
course.
getting if you just went to the mind itself, because you would only do what
Yeah.
you could do,
Yeah.
right? You wouldn't have to,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have all these things to figure out.
Okay.
Like Robert Schmidt, you know Robert Schmidt.
Yes.
Endlessly figuring out stuff,
Yeah.
but he's a brilliant mind.
Yeah.
We lived together for years. It would be much easier for him not to use Greek or Latin or German, but just to learn to go into the mind itself.
Yes.
And it would come out more natural as he is,
Yeah.
instead of through the language of Greece.
Yeah.
The Greeks. Anyway, just my.
Yeah, I
my
understand.
two
I
cents.
understand. I think that I would sum it up like this: it's just a tool. It's not gospel. It's not anything. It's just a tool, and you shouldn't be addicted to it. You should always count on your own mind and journey inwards and extrapolate the principles from yourself and your direct connection to this knowledge. I agree with that, and
Well, I have to stop this because we.
it's long.
He's 84.
Okay.
I need to talk to him.
Yes.
Well, I can.
Yeah.
But I would like to talk to you anytime,
Yeah.
if you have any time,
Okay.
and continue our conversation, because I really feel you're remarkable
Thank you.
and a very beautiful mind.
Thank you.
And I think we could have some good conversation. And I still need to understand a little bit better about how you're transferring the light
Yeah.
in these things. I don't totally get it.
Yeah.
But I'd like to.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Michael, for everything.
Well, you too. So talk to you soon. I'll
Yes.
come do this.